feel stink-eyed. We try our best, and we're successful. Come watch our show. Bet River sponsors. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Well, welcome aboard, everyone, to Betting Weekly Live. It is Friday, the 28th of February, the last day of February. No leap year this year. And I got a special today. Delighted to have Doug Kezirian on the show again. And I'm joined by Jack Wright as well. So we're going to be talking about some basketball later on with Doug. We've got some soccer talk with myself and Jack. But Doug, it's great to have you back on Betting Weekly Live. How have you been doing?
Steve, thanks so much. You know, the Super Bowl was a dud. That's the last time I was on the show to discuss the big game. But basketball's been great. And, you know, there are a bit more opportunities in the sports betting world in hoops, especially college basketball, than the NFL. But we in America love our American football. But it's been a great season. And obviously the calendar is one day away from March. So that means March Madness is just around the corner.
Yeah, how do you sort of switch over from when, you know, the NFL college football season into basketball? I know it's been ongoing. Is it a bit of sadness for you, a relief, or, you know, good to sort of refocus the mind on pastures new?
Honestly, you know, December and January are great, and sometimes my favorite because you have so many sports going on, right? College basketball is underway, NBA is underway, NHL is underway. And then the NFL regular season with the college football playoff now. So it's great. I do miss the football, but having a hard reset's not the end of the world either.
Jack, what's your secondary sport to bet on, apart from soccer? Or are you solely a soccer man these days?
Yeah, I think because of the work that I do is completely taken over, to be fair. I still dip my toe in other little bits and pieces, a little bit of horse racing, not necessarily know much about the actual sport, but it's just like numbers, really, to be fair. I feel like there is something that I'm bet on and I can't actually think of what it is, but yeah, it's like 95% soccer now.
How are you doing, Jack? You've been hitting plenty of winners on the Premier League show. You're about the only handicapper that has been hitting winners this week. I drew a blank with James. Nigel was a bit unlucky with his hot dog. You've been doing well.
It's been a good fortnight. Yeah, it was one of those ones that we had the usual weekend stuff, didn't we? And I had a good weekend, and then we went straight into recording on the Monday. And I'm thinking that there's no time to like kind of bask in the glory. You're only as good as you that week, isn't it? And only good as your last bet, really. So I was determined to follow it up with a strong week, and I went undefeated. It was a bit of an unlucky push to start. But then, yeah, hit the hot dog and a really easy winner last night. Went according to plan, which is always nice when that happens. So, yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a $25,000 loser on the West Ham game, though, with one particular bettor last night. Over 2.5 goals at minus 139. That didn't cash. It was 2-0 at halftime as well. So, that was a notable loser. The biggest winner on the plate was the over $30,000 on the Lakers, minus 2.5 against the Timberwolves at minus 200. So well done to that particular bet. Loads of live streams today. I'll tell you about them later. Plenty of house specials as well. Welcoming everyone. Rick Haley, Stephen Boyle. Good to see you. Villa fan as well. Duncan, Rich. And downhill skiing. We did have a downhill skiing bet with Rory Giwani a few weeks ago. But if you've got any questions for me, Doug, or Jack, get them in, and we'll do our very best to answer them. We're going to start with a bit of soccer, and there is a few games in Europe on today. Monaco, Reims in France, Stuttgart, Bayern Munich, Fiorentina, Lecce. I will start the ball rolling with what I think is a pretty obvious pick today in France, in Liga. Monaco against a Rams side who haven't won in quite a long time in the league anyway. They did have a cup win midweek on penalties. Monaco are on minus 1.5 on the Asian handicap at minus 108. Nothing to focus on now for them apart from the league, and they should really have too much for this Rams side, who are pretty poor anyway, but may well be struggling after the midweek exertions in the cup. I just think just play the straight 1.5 handicap here. Monaco won a recent home game 7-1 against Nantes, which is a huge win in soccer terms. And I think they should get the result. I've said before, there's some strange Friday night outcomes sometimes in the soccer world, but I don't think this will be one of them. And the second play for me would be in Germany, Stuttgart, Bayern Munich, over 3 Asian goals at -122. Simple reason being both sides average really high on the goals this season. Stuttgart games average 3.6 goals per game at home with 9 out of 12 matches over 2.5. And Bayern Munich, 3.8 goals per game average for them across the season. I genuinely thought this goal line would be at 3.5 at -125-ish. So we can get a 3 Asian goal line at -122. Those were the 2 bets that stood out to me as the best 2. But I suspect there might be a bit more action actually in England, Jack, and which we've got you on for here. We've got 2 games. We've got an FA Cup match and we've got a Championship game. FA Cup is at the round of 16 stage now, and we get a really spicy game to kick things off with Aston Villa against Cardiff. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, this is interesting. This is one to certainly look at the team news on. I don't think Villa are going to be able to rotate too heavily. Just looking through the headline news, their goalkeeper, Emi Martinez, one of the best in the world, has got an injury. He was off at half-time, but I think they probably would have rotated him out for this one anyway. Olsen's in. If he can get the kids out of his goal mouth having a penalty shootout competition, then he'll be fine. But he should come in that one. Couple of defensive issues. Disasi's suspended. And Mings again is carrying a knock. He has been for a while, but I think they're going to have to patch him up and send him out. Really, they've got not too many options defensively. More options up front, and I think that's where people will have to have a little look to see what they can get into for Villa's front line. You would expect them to score a couple of goals today against Cardiff. Obviously, these 2 sides they're in different divisions. First of all, important to mention that. And Villa, of course, have a huge Champions League fixture on Tuesday against Club Brugge. So, again, they'll have one eye on that, which will lend itself to a bet. And much of the reason I've gone down this route with one of these bets in this game is because of that massive game coming up. And for their part, Cardiff have got a championship clash with Burnley. Cardiff are struggling towards the bottom of the table. Massive win for them in midweek. They beat Hull to go 6 points clear of the relegation zone, but they're playing Burnley in this coming midweek. So again, they're only 6 points clear of the bottom, so they'll want to try and pick up some points from that game. So both sides with other fixtures on the horizon, so which will play into this game tonight, to be fair. So the odds obviously suggest that Villa are very, very strong favourites to get through, and 3rd favourites for the FA Cup outright now at +700 with Bet Rivers. And
best bet then for the game overall?
Well, it's a player bet is one that I like, but I've got 2 just in case he doesn't start. I'm deputising here in FA Cup tradition. We've rotated because Nigel's brought the up and coming one in for today. He's rested for this one for bigger fish to fry next week. So I'm going with Marcus Rashford here. It's one of Nigel's favourite plays, going with Marcus Rashford. I think he's got a lot of motivation. There's talk that he wants to go and move to Villa permanently after this loan is finished. And it really caught my eye that he's a decent price, plus money to score at any time in this, but he's -107 to score or assist. And I think that's a huge price for a player that's hit the ground running at Villa. He looks to have his kind of mojo back. He looked like he wants to go out there and prove a point. He should have a good chance against Cardiff. They are one of the leakiest defences in the Championship, the 3rd leakiest defence, and the expected goals and the underlying data back that up as well. They're also their expected goals per shot is the 2nd highest in the Championship, showing that they give high quality chances. And if they concede that many goals in the Championship, when up against the likes of this Villa front line, I think they're in for a bit of a torrid time. So Marcus Rashford -107 to score or assist for me is the best play. The other one would be people looking at Villa winning it. I'd go first half. It's -2 the Asian handicap on this full time. My worry would be that they could get their noses in front and then look to coast, take off their better players with that big game next week in mind. They don't necessarily need to win this by 3 or 4 goals. So I think a quick start for them suits them. That's that ideal scenario. If they can get off to a great start first half, maybe get a goal, 2 goals up, they can then look to possibly even rotate people at half time. So the -1 first half Asian handicap for them is plus money. And that's the one that catches my eye. So it's plus 120 for them on a -1. Obviously, if they're only leading at half time by 1 goal, we get a full refund. We get a push on that, but we get the full bang for our buck. We get cash the ticket in full if they are winning by 2 or more at half time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. Really, Villa should get the job done quite easily, no matter what 11 they reel out, in my personal opinion. I want to welcome in Duncan Evans, Stephen Boyle as well. Real Brennan King. So it's nice to have Doug back. And he's glad that Nigel didn't scare you off, Doug. Paul Lacuna, good to see you. Ming Chung. I thought when you said Mings is injured, I thought you were on about Ming Chung being injured then. I hope you're all right.
He's never present. Ming Chung is never present. He never misses a game.
Yeah, I hope he's all right. I hope you're fighting fit. Clunk, welcome to you. He says, has Doug got any tips on the betting for March Madness for someone who doesn't follow it closely? We are going to be talking heavily about that very, very soon. But this Rashford score assist -107. Paul, you're absolutely right. It's going to follow that one in.
Villa fans just mentioned Milan to score. I'm sure he probably knows it himself. I don't know if he's got even later news than me, but there was talk that Milan has got an illness. He was cast as a doubt by Unai Emery yesterday for this game. It's not serious, and he said 24 hours he could be absolutely fine to play, but at this moment he's a doubt because he's ill. But so we'll have to see. That's why team news is important. Certainly would be a player to keep an eye on. A massive point to prove, for him if he is starting.
Ever follow any of the FA Cup out there in America, Doug? Is it shown much above the Premier League? It's I suppose maybe the final might get a bit more interest out in America.
Yeah, as a sports bettor, you kind of learn the hard way when I was younger that you can't do every sport the same way, right? Like there's only so many hours in the day. So I have colleagues, if you will, team members that do specialize in things like that. My wheelhouse is some of the other sports, but so that's my roundabout way of saying I'm not quite sure because my head is in the sand with the sports that I focus on. But I do know bettors are expanding their reach because, stuff's on TV. People want to wager on it. So I see more soccer content than I used to see. But it's really about, what your appetite is. And, in America, soccer will never be quite the same as it is in other, Europe. Like that.
Yeah.
But it is growing. There's always interest. And I think the time difference too, sometimes helps, right? Especially on the East Coast. It's not that early, some of the games as opposed to the West Coast where I am in Las Vegas. So I would say it just depends on your appetite and your thirst for betting action because it's on hours that isn't necessarily where, other American sports are.
Yeah, do you think that's generally a good bit of advice as to maybe specialize more in what your strengths are? But there are people out there who have a huge wheelhouse in general. I suppose it depends what type of person you are and what your time restraints are. But it seems like you've sort of gone down the more specialist route, concentrate on certain sports, and that's serving you really well.
Right. If you're a casual sports fan and a casual recreational bettor, I think you can follow it all and enjoy a game here and there and wager on it, whether you're listening to podcasts like this and things of, sort of extracting information and helping you along the way. But for someone like myself, who's very sort of immersed in, I joke that I'm an inch wide and a mile deep on sort of my content. Like if I do something, I do it all in. So, and then I in-game wager a lot and things like that. So you just can't in-game wager every sport all the time. And, I do have 5 TVs, but I know my lane. Like I said a second ago, it's like I learned the hard way sometimes. You're competing against, multi-million-dollar outfits and algorithms and all this stuff. So pick your spots. But in terms of casually, I'll watch a bunch. Like the Four Nations hockey event last week was great. And I had it on the big screen, but by no means am I a hockey guru.
Yeah, I saw some of the highlights from that Four Nations. It got a bit spicy, didn't it, right from the get-go? But Stephen Boyle said it's easier there to watch the FA Cup than Premier League in the US. Perhaps it is in certain states there. Player Cam, welcome in. He says, get on Miranda's on Monday in the Spanish second division, -117. Here we go. That's the best bet for Monday already.
Far down yet.
Straight in there with that is player camp. Right, before you leave us, Jack, we've got a championship match to discuss. It's Sheffield Wednesday against Sunderland. Closest betting here, Sunderland +143 against a Sheffield Wednesday side who have been struggling recently, and you're looking to fade them.
I am, yeah. Just a real quick one. I just noticed someone asked about both teams to score in the FA Cup. In the FA Cup tie, be wary of it because of rotated Aston Villa defense, or people are talking about the win to nil as well. Aston Villa's defense will be rotated, and also they do concede a lot of goals. I think they've only kept 3 clean sheets in the league this season. And Cardiff, with Omar Rizzo as their manager, is very front foot, so they will look to get on the score sheet in this one. So yeah, be cautious of that. Probably better opportunities elsewhere than going down that route, but each to their own. So yeah, championship, Sheffield Wednesday, Sunderland. I'm fancying Sunderland for this one. It's an important game for them. They're just about getting out of touch with that top 3 lead. Your side Leeds, of course, up there. Burnley, Sheffield United, and Sunderland have lost their last couple. One being Leeds, and then a real surprise against relegation struggling Hull in said midweek, and that was a real, or last weekend. So it was a real bad result for them. And that was a goalkeeping error there. So they'll look to put it right tonight. They're up against the Sheffield Wednesday side that just do not perform well against the better sides in the league. We saw last season where 4 teams went clear. And my strategy really here is to look into those 4 and kind of try and base your betting around how teams get on against those better sides. Do they perform well against the better sides because they can perform a certain way, sit deep, hit the counter attack, or do they struggle? Sheffield Wednesday definitely struggle. They played the top 4 6 times so far this season, home and away. They've lost all 6. They're yet to score a goal, and they've been thumped on most occasions, to be fair. The one in there is Sheffield United. They're cross-city rivals. They've only played them once. That was a 1-0 result. I kind of ruled that one out a little bit because it's also got the context of a derby in there as well. But you look at the other games, and they have really struggled. Sunderland actually were the first side to play them. They beat them 4-0 in the reverse fixture at the Stadium of Light, a convincing win then. Burnley were the last side to play them last weekend. They beat them 4-0 as well. So the first results and the last results, nothing much has changed in those fixtures at all. Leeds beat them 3-0 at Ellen Road at home, and both Burnley and Leeds won 2-0 at this venue at Hillsborough in those away games. So we can draw some real tight form lines to that, and therefore like a 2-0 result for Sunderland, possibly even a 3-0 result wouldn't surprise me at all. So Sunderland win for me. They're plus money, which I think is a good price. Anyone who wants a little bit of a safety net, I kind of will look to be a bit more aggressive with my betting, maybe limit mistakes, water mistakes down a little bit to play the plus 140 on a Sunderland win. The Tyno bet is at -129. Wouldn't put anyone off that. So if you're looking for a little bit of a safety net where you get a refund or a push if it does end all square. Anyone want to be a bit more aggressive, go the other way. A win to nil is plus 280, and as I said, they're yet to score against those better sides in the league. And their games at home do tend to be less goals. You look at them across the board, and they're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as over 2.5 goals is concerned. But they're one of the strongest under 2.5 goal teams in the league at home.
Brilliant analysis of that game, Jack. And we thank you so much for your contribution today on Betting Weekly Live. We can watch you again next week on Premier League with Nigel and Dan. So well done on a great bit of recent form. We'll have to let you go now. We'll be back in about 10 ticks with me and Doug talking basketball. So take care, Jack, and we'll see you next time.
See you all.
Right, there we go, Doug. Got the graphics sorted. It's me and you for the rest of the show. So the floor is ours here. The floor is yours, really, here, because we're going to be on. We've got some matches on Friday in the college basketball to discuss. Got some graphics up there. We'll start with the match there, UCLA against Purdue. We've got a spread at -5.5. And the money line on Purdue -240. Give us your analysis of this game. What's the bet for it?
So this is we talk about in the sports betting space, situational handicapping, right? In a vacuum, this seems like a really high point spread for Purdue, right? 5.5 is a big number, all things considered. But Purdue has lost 4 straight games. So to be ranked and lost 4 straight, they've fallen in the rankings. And it's really a team that just the spot on the schedule is really tough. But they last played on Sunday. And so they've had good practices, reports of a team meeting, and it's sort of like a get right spot for the Boilermakers at home. Should be a great atmosphere Friday night. You got a blue blood UCLA in town, and the Bruins head coach Mick Cronin has complained about the travel a little bit. So late in the season, that could be wearing on UCLA, but they haven't played since Sunday. So it's not like it's a bunch of travel or it's a long road trip or anything like that. But this is about Purdue getting right and having more energy, more bounce in their step. It's certainly a narrative, like they want the game more, so to speak. But you have to be careful in these situations. There is a tax with Purdue. You're having to pay for the desperation that one assumes comes with the Boilermakers. But I still think it's a regular play for me, not like the biggest play in the world, but I do think it's a regular play. So I am laying the points with Purdue. I think they get back on track, and I think it's going to be a really crisp and sharp sort of execution on both sides of the court.
Yeah, just looking through some of the comments. Yeah, sorry, there was a slight graphical mistake there. It's not the NBA. We've got an NBA game we're going to talk about very, very soon. This one here from Matt Lawrence. Doug, I've got 60-1 on the Wisconsin Badgers future ticket. Do you like the Badgers?
I like it. I like it a lot because this is a Wisconsin team that plays a lot more offense than we are sort of used to in the recent years of Bo Ryan when he was the coach. They play a bunch of offense, and I think the ceiling is pretty high. So I was actually looking at them at 40-1. I said, I know they were 80-1 a couple of weeks ago, so I'm torn to take 40-1. But I do think we're going to have some long shots make the Final Four. Now, whether they win it all, that's a whole nother story. But I do think the SEC is the best conference. How can you not? But outside of that, that doesn't mean only the SEC can win the title. I do think some of the other conferences are top heavy, like ACC has a couple teams at the top, obviously too. And then Big Ten, I do think Wisconsin's ceiling is as high as they come. And that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament. This is not the NBA where you have to win best out of 7. You have to win one game, and on that day, you can be better than anyone. And so I do like a lot of long shot tickets. It's both a gift and a curse. I hate that we don't know the bracket because you might end up having a lot of the same long shots in the same bracket and region. But there's also a reason you're getting so many lofty odds. I think you have to kind of think about their best performance, right? Or A, are they reliable? But B, like at their best, can they compete with the best teams? And I think they can. And you're always looking for value because you can play out of certain positions and stuff like that. But yeah, I would definitely, like, if Wisconsin was available right now at 60-1, I would bet it.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about national title plays later with some futures as well, which is going to be a really good discussion. But before that, talk to me about Nevada at UNLV today, Doug. We've got a close betting heat here. Nevada minus 143 on the money line, UNLV plus 117. It's near enough as a pick 'em as you can get in basketball, right? So what's the play here?
So this is a rivalry game. Both teams in the state of Nevada. Now they're a few hundred miles away, but still a rivalry game. And it's in UNLV here in Las Vegas, but they're down their leading scorer and best player and their top assist guy. So Deaton Thomas is out. And I just think the offense is going to be too stagnant. Now, they have played a few games without their guy, so that, it's not the first game without him. So the adjustment period with practice, I wouldn't say it's wearing off, but it's not as severe as it was in the first couple games, right? They did win their last game on the road at San Jose State, but last Saturday, they played at home against Colorado State, who I think is comparable to Nevada, and they lost by 8 at home. They were down 12-2 to start or something along those lines. So I think Nevada, with an experienced coach and Steve Alford, has a little too much firepower, I guess is the right word. But I do think it's the right it's the right side in this game. Now you have to factor in rivalry and stuff, but late night hoops, kind of like we talked about with soccer being early. Late night, I think it's the right side to play, even though you're talking about a road slight favorite.
Yeah, the rivalry games always interest me in any sport, really, because sometimes in soccer we say throw the form book out the window, anything can happen.
Right.
Not quite sure if the same always applies in maybe basketball, but there is something different, isn't there? That you've got to maybe adapt to with the lines, and I think that's a fair call, really, in that one. We've got down here on the itinerary sheet an interesting conversation. Northwestern -4.5 at Iowa. Just some thoughts on this game. I think it's more of a lean from you, Doug. But is that the sort of handicap you'd be looking to get involved in?
Yeah, very similar to what I was talking about with Purdue. There is a tax here with Northwestern, and teams come back to earth. There's always regression, right? The math guys will talk about regression all the time, whether it be a first half, second half scoring and a total and things like that. Now, Northwestern, but I also think you can keep in mind, like teams can peak, right? Teams are allowed to get better, especially with good coaching. And Northwestern sort of in that run where they're coming off back-to-back road wins convincingly by double digits against Ohio State and Minnesota and out of nowhere. But Iowa is sort of spiraling and they're fading pretty hard. Their coach might be done after this season. And in recent years, they've been a fun team to bet on. But on the road, I'm just doing a quick look here. They've lost. So they did win one game on the road in conference play, but the other ones, they've all been blown out. So 6 of their last 7 road games, they've lost by double digits. Now, going to the West Coast like USC and UCLA is different than going to Northwestern for Iowa, right? It's a drive versus a long flight. But I do think Northwestern's peaking with some excellent coaching staff and the pieces are fitting. But there is a little bit of a tax, the numbers is high. So it's a strong lean. I might end up playing it. I want no part of the underdog, but I do think the favorite is the right side. It's just, I'm laying at a point and a half more than I thought I'd have to.
So if that spread moved to say -3, you'd be all over it, like German
Yes.
measles sort of thing. Yeah. Question here from Nigel. St. John's at 40-1 in the UK. Is that a bet without knowing the bracket? He spoke to a few New Yorkers at the weekend, saying they like their chances. What do you think of St. John's at 40-1?
Well, the nice thing is the market stays up every day. So you just can compare it to the current market. St. John's 25-1 right now at Bet River. So in theory, right, if you have the invisible hand of the market, you're looking at value. Now, I think it's really savvy to understand your audience. And you say, I'm talking to New Yorkers. So you got to take things with a grain of salt sometimes. But you have arguably the best coach ever in Pitino. Maybe that's a little strong. Modern day best coach. They are 7th ranked team in the country. Their defense is elite, right? They full court press. They make you earn everything in the half court. They had a tough game at Hinkle Fieldhouse against Butler, but they hung on. That favorable whistle, all things considered. But I think this team's battle tested. Pitino in the tournament, keep in mind, this is where he'll excel. Between the first and the second round and the third and the fourth round, there's only a 48-hour turnaround to prepare for your opponent. So that's where a guy like Pitino is really going to shine. I find it hard to envision, unless they just go ice cold from the field, where Pitino is not going to have a huge edge, not even just a small edge, a huge edge when facing a second round or fourth round opponent. So that fourth round, which is the Elite Eight, with a trip to the Final Four on the line, you're going to have Pitino on a 48-hour turnaround, handicapping and carving out the opponent in terms of the scouting report. And then that defense. So things that could, and the other thing is with all of this, not just this, but any game, whatnot, you always have to remind yourself to play a little devil's advocate. Say, no matter how much I love this play, like, for example, in this case, it's St. John's, no matter how much I love this St. John's play, there's someone on the other side who's sharp who does not. Why is that? Well, St. John's, they play pretty physical defensively. So if the officials in the game just are calling a tighter whistle, then that really could hurt St. John's, right? They're not going to be able to play as physical, and their defense won't be as intact and connected. Maybe their offense, the shooting is the concern, right? Maybe they just go ice cold. And we talked about earlier with some of the long shots, how it's a one-game situation as opposed to a series, that's going to, rear its ugly head if you're on one of the favorites and you just don't play well. You just don't shoot well, you don't play well, that's going to happen. But I think at that price, that's a pretty solid ticket. I wish I bet it a little bit ago.
Yeah. Just on some notable Friday wagers, Purdue actually, and this will change because this was sent to me on an email from the trader an hour ago. Purdue on the money line, nearly $5,000 on them. This was a match we just talked about earlier. Purdue -4.5 as well. Again, what Doug suggested is the biggest bet handicap. That will change significantly as we get closer to the kickoff, of course. But one of the other biggest plays of the day was over $2,500 on Marist moneyline against Sacred Heart. We do have an NBA match to discuss, and this is New York Knicks at the Memphis Grizzlies. Interesting handicap here, -3.5 or -4 as it is on the screen there. You can play around with your lines with Bet Rivers. Always worth looking at to get the one that you want if you're happy with the odds. The Grizzlies -165 on the money line there. Is that worth taking, Doug? Because I think you do like the favorite in this game, right?
I do. It's a couple things. This comes back to situational handicapping, like I was alluding to a second ago. The Knicks played the Grizzlies a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and won by 37. It was the worst loss of Memphis for the season. They had a season high 26 turnovers, or maybe even 26 turnovers, and Knicks only had 10. It was just one of the worst games Memphis had played all year. Memphis is a really solid team against the point spread. I believe they rank second or third best in the NBA. And the Knicks, coming off a win, one of their stars, Karl Anthony Towns, may not play. He missed the last game. And they already don't have much depth because of injuries and the fact that their head coach plays the starters so many minutes. Knicks shot great, especially in the second half in that previous meeting. We talk about regression. I just think it's a good situation for the Grizzlies to sort of get back on track. Knicks don't play much defense. So I think the Grizzlies run an interesting offense where they look for the three and they do a lot of dribble replace. So they'll pump fake, guy flies out and to block the shot. They drive, and the next shooter rotates. So they ultimately, against a weak defense like New York, they get open threes. And I just think it'll be a nice sort of like desire, and not desperation is a strong word, but they're going to want this game a little more than the Knicks. So I like Memphis in this spot to get the W. I really do.
Yeah, to win the game, -3.5 on the handicap. If I was to give you a free $50 play on either the Grizzlies to win the NBA championship at 40-1 with Bet Rivers, or the Knicks at 20-1, who would you put it on? It's a good question.
So the Knicks are interesting because they can't beat any of the top teams. They're 0-8, I believe, against the top seeds in the league. I wouldn't make either wager, but I would probably bet the Knicks. I think the West is going to be awesome every night. I just don't think the Grizzlies' ceiling is that high from a playoff standpoint. I think they're more of a regular season team. And look, the regular season is a different ask than the postseason. You're traveling less in the postseason. You shorten your bench. It's more star driven. I think the Grizzlies are going to come up a little short, although they might end up with the 2 seed in the West. I think the Knicks maybe catch a break. I would say the Knicks would probably be a better wager because we've seen them make a run in the playoffs. They just can avoid some injuries. I think when they get healthy, they're going to be a tough out. They play really hard, and they obviously tweak their roster in the offseason, so they have Towns now. I would say the Knicks on that one.
Yeah, we've got the Boston Celtics and OKC Thunder +175 joint favorites with Bet Rivers in the NBA championship. We're not going to talk about that particular future, but there is an NBA future which you're very interested in, Doug, and this is in the most improved player market. Cade Cunningham -200. We've got Norman Powell there +150, and then it's 16 to 1 bar. The favorite here at minus 200. Now, there might be players out there who don't like betting at minus 200, but it's well worth saying that if the value bet is there, the value bet is there, right? And Cade Cunningham, you think is definitely worth a good look.
I do. And I sympathize and I identify with everyone who doesn't want to lay $2 and tie up your money. But you're only tying your money up for a little less than 2 months, right? It's not like it's 7 months or you're betting, next year's Super Bowl, right? It's Cade Cunningham's going to win this award. And with any sort of award like this, you have to handicap the voters as much as the players. Is what typically is prioritized amongst the voters, narratives, things like that. Every year it's a different animal. And I would say Cunningham fits the mold of past winners. And I think the way things are playing out, whereas this Pistons team has won 8 straight games for the first time since 2018, I believe. They're in the playoff mix, like right in the middle. So they're going to make the playoffs. He's a rising superstar, not even a rising star. He's already an all-star. And the way this award goes out, it's usually to guys in their 3rd season or so that emerge and take the next step. Whereas Norman Powell, who should be considered, and he's had a great year, he's in his 12th season, and that typically does not get rewarded by voters. Now, there's always outlier seasons, things like that. But I think Cunningham and what the Pistons are doing is really special. And also, whether it's conscious or subconscious, there is a tendency by voters to reward a team one way or another. So with the awards markets, they don't like one team to get all the awards. So if a coach is going to get coach of the year, they usually, blah, blah, blah. So they're having a great year, and their coach is the 2nd betting favorite right now for coach of the year. I don't think he's going to win coach of the year, even though he should very much should be almost co-favorites. And the market's tightening up, so you never know if he does. But I do think voters will want to spread the wealth, so to speak. So they'll give so they'll give maybe Cunningham most improved if the coach doesn't win coach of the year. It's kind of silly, but that's how it's done. Now, you don't want to put the mortgage on it, but I do think there's line value. I would make this like minus 350. So it's not a huge edge when you talk about percentages or whatever, but I do think it's worth a play.
Yeah, absolutely. If the value's there, the value's there, even at minus 200. I'm just interested. Who actually does vote for this? Who is it, official or?
So every sport's different. So in the NBA, there's media voters, there's media members, and in college football, the Heisman Trophy voters are asked not to share who their ballot is and things like that. In the NBA, it's more public. Guys will talk about who they're leaning towards. So it's really a fascinating concept where you could sit here, especially with the internet, scour every voter, find them on radio shows, podcasts, see where their opinions are, and sort of create a spreadsheet and where it's like the soft, almost straw poll, and figure out where the winds are blowing. I know there's a popular ESPN MVP straw poll that actually moves markets because they're talking to media members who vote. So it's a window into the votes, right? It's an early voting, right? Just like political betting changes as precincts report. So it's early precinct reporting is essentially what it is. But it's funny because in the awards market, it's humans, right? It's humans voting. And there's a herd mentality to this. And votes are publicized at the end of the year. And then sometimes people are ridiculed and criticized. And no one likes to be criticized, unless you're polarizing and try to move the needle and resonate in the Twitter sphere. But I think there's an element of herd mentality. You have to handicap that, and people are sort of agreeable by nature. And this is all part of the how the sausage is made when you look at some of this stuff. And so you have to be kind of really in tune with humans and narratives and sports talk radio and podcasts and really get a feel and sort of sniff it out and sense it. It's not just saying it's not just who wins the game or who's going to play well, in this case one player, but it's about how is it being received, how is it being talked about, and sort of forecasting that element.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating, what you've just described there, Doug. It really does make you think about how you've got to approach betting sometimes from a human element. And there you go. Cade Cunningham, most improved player this season, NBA, minus 200. We're going to move to another futures market now, a market which we've had quite a lot of questions about. And you're going to get stuck in here with some big priced dogs. The championship winner, so many names on the board there, thanks to my graphics man John, who's done a great job with this one. Auburn and Duke, the favorites here, plus 340. And I can tell you now, the most wagered team is Auburn with 17% of the money, but the largest percentage of total tickets in the outright is Duke with 22.4% there. And Duke are also the most wagered team to make the Final Four by handle, over 10% of the handle on Duke to make the Final Four. Numbers which I'm guessing you wouldn't be too surprised at there, Doug, with the favourites. You're looking a bit further down the list for some plays here. There's one or two at huge prices here. Talk us who you like for the national title plays.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting every year, right? Every year has a different sort of vibe and flow. And I think sometimes people complain, sports fans, not bettors as much. But as a sports bettor, we all need to lean into whatever something is and what it isn't, right? Like we'll fix it. We'll fix it in the off season. We'll do sports talk radio another year, but let's embrace what it is. Kind of like awards betting. It can sound so stupid why we're voting for a certain player, but that's just the way it is. And so this particular season, I think, is extremely top heavy with some of those top teams, like you mentioned, Auburn, Duke. I think they're going to be 1 seeds. Houston, very much in the mix. Like, I don't think Alabama's going to win. They play too much sort of math ball. Like, they take good shots, high percentages. And yeah, you're hitting on 11 against a 5 or double downing, but that doesn't mean you get the face card and doesn't mean you guarantee to win the hand. So I think it's really hard to win 6 games. Now, they've reached the Final Four and things like that in the past, but I'm not convinced Alabama's going to make that run. They've lost games in certain ways, even though they're better. I just don't think they're as reliable as some of these other teams like Auburn. But, Auburn's the best team in the country, so you can't just compare every team to that. I'm not – Tennessee's offense is too bad, right? And then it's also March Madness. We rarely see chalk hold serve all the way through the bracket. So in the Elite Eight, we rarely see the 1 versus the 2 in that region go to the Final Four. So you want to look at some teams that have the potential, the high upside, as I talked about earlier, with Wisconsin, with St. John's. There are teams that have caught my eye at certain prices. For example, let's start with Clemson. Clemson's ceiling is really good. They beat Duke, albeit on their home court, but they're a team that's capable of playing well. And it's 75-1. That seems pretty skewed. If you look at the current rankings, they're 13th. And I don't think UConn has a chance. They're just too inconsistent. Don't see, for them and UConn to have the same price. Now, the UConn's a 2-time defending champ, so there's probably a lot of money on them from the beginning of the season. I would understand. But I think Clemson's ceiling is higher than Purdue's. I like Maryland. I don't love Michigan or even A&M, but Kentucky for sure I don't. So I think Clemson, you're getting value at 75-1. Now, the ACC, which is their conference, is a down year. But last year, the Big East wasn't necessarily great, but it produced the national champion. So even though ACC is not a typical season where they're deep and they have a bunch of good teams, they're top heavy. Duke's excellent, we think. And Clemson's really good on a really good day. I like their backcourt. I like their coach. They have the right bigs. Bigs can stretch the defense. So I think it's 75-1, going back to the March Madness concept of how a bracket can unfold. I think that feels like too high of a price.
Yeah, 75-1 there on Clemson. And you're going even bigger here with your next two. We've got a 120-1 shot and a 200-1 poke as well, Doug. I find this fascinating that obviously you got the 1 game thing. Maybe anything can happen on the day.
Right.
So maybe I don't know what the history of the winners are in this. Maybe some big prices can, if not win it, then go deep into the tournament. So yeah, talk us through your final 2 plays here at really big prices.
Yeah, let's start with BYU, which is the 25th ranked team in the country right now. So they're in the far right column in the middle of the column. And the reason I like the Cougars is their offensive execution. They run really clean and efficient and crisp sets. Now, they do have a distinct home court advantage. So maybe their appearance right now in conference play at home is inflated a bit because of the altitude and just the travel spots and things like that. But I like their coach. I like their offensive flow. And just what you were saying, a bracket can break the right way. And things can unfold a certain way. Now, are they super battle tested? No, but I think they're sort of peaking at the end of the season. Teams are allowed to get better, as I often jokingly say, like, don't forget that. And also, you want to also consider the power rating of a team. So power ratings make the point spreads, as we discuss often. But sometimes, as stubborn as the odds market can be, power ratings do change. And so I think the Cougars' power rating could evolve throughout the tournament. So let's say they get seeded. And remember, these teams are not like double-digit seeds or anything silly like that. Like Clemson right now is projected as a 5 seed. So we see 5 seeds make it all the time. And BYU would be like a 7 seed, I think, right now. So it's not that crazy or far-fetched to envision a 7 seed making the Final Four. And yeah, they're not a household name, but they're also not Cinderella, like the little engine that could going up the hill. Like they're a 7, 8, 9 seed, and they can catch. It's rare that all 4 1 seeds make even the second weekend, right? That make it out of the first weekend, right? They beat the 16 seed, and then they have a 1 versus 8 matchup, and it's like a 7.5 to 9.5 point spread. So it's not that crazy to envision an upset. So at 120, it's a ridiculous number, and for a ranked team that I think is sort of peaking at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking down the list here now. I mean, there's some huge prices. Got the likes of Pittsburgh, NC State, 600 to 1, Iowa as well. So there's some massive prices, but you've got a 200 to 1 suggestion here. It just fits on the graphic page here. Let's talk about Oregon.
So Oregon's a team that has a pretty high ceiling, I think. Now, they're not a team that demonstrates that ceiling very often. So that's the trade-off. But you're also looking at 200 to 1, right? I'm not expecting a big play, but we saw what their capabilities are. Now, it took a late game collapse, but they went into Wisconsin and beat them on the road in Madison. Dana Altman, their coach, has a history of having the Ducks play really well at the end of the season. And experienced coaches matter. I talked about it with Patino with the quick turnaround from the first to the second round and from the third to the fourth round. Like Oregon has some playmakers. They have a couple of really big centers in Biddle, but right now they're projected as a 5 seed. So as a 200 to 1, a 5 seed to make a run like that is not that crazy. And this goes back to the conferences. Big Ten, depending on how you look at it, maybe Big 12, but I would say the Big 10 is the second best conference in college basketball right now behind the SEC. So they're fairly battle tested. Doesn't mean they've won every game in those battles, but they've played tough opponents. Like I said, they went into Wisconsin, hung around, hit some big shots. They've smoked some teams at home. Like, don't sleep on Oregon with Dana Altman as the coach. Like, he knows what he's doing. 200 to 1 is a pretty long number. Again, just a sprinkle. But one of our, viewers put in a question saying, it's tough not knowing the bracket, but that's as much as that's a disadvantage, it's also a little bit of the advantage because sometimes the bracket can look really favorable and then you're not getting 200 to 1.
Yeah, so 3 plays there. Clemson at 75 to 1, BYU 120 to 1, Oregon 200 to 1. Just going back to the comments. Sorry, Paul. I missed this one. Sparty at 300 to 1. Yeah. What do you think to that? And do you think UNC gets in the dance?
So Sparty's interesting because they have their coach, Tom Izzo, right? Who thrives in the month of March. He's made, I think, 7 or 8 Final Fours. So you can't go wrong with betting on Michigan State with Tom Izzo at the helm. And they have the right playmakers, right? They just had the big, as much as they got lucky with the full court shot or whatever, that was the right side. So they just won at Maryland, and they were the better team most of the game. I don't love it because it's only 30-1, but I would not, bet 1-30 or so. I think it's a fair number. It's fair. I think it's a fair market number. I like the Big Ten, as I was just touched on. I think the teams are battle tested, maybe not to the same extent the top of the SEC is, but I do think I wouldn't be stunned if the Big Ten produced the national champion. It's just they're not super top heavy, right? They don't have the elite teams, but they're certainly all really solid. And when you have Izzo, for sure. North Carolina, I hate them, and I've bet against them a few times, but I've stopped betting against them because they are sort of playing themselves into the tournament. Right now, they're projected out, but they've been on a nice run. I just don't think highly of them. So, I would never bet them because I think they're too inconsistent and too undisciplined to make a legit run. But the question is, will they get in the tournament? They might. Unknowingly, the committee has been rewarding some of these middle of the pack power conferences. I just don't think they belong. Like, I just don't think they're a good team that belongs, but we shall see. They played Duke at the end of the year, obviously. They got killed at home. On the road earlier. If they make a nice run in the tournament, they're on the bubble, and I think they're the definition of a bubble team. I'm just not enamored with them. And then Hubert Davis's contract just got announced. I just don't love the Tar Heels. I think Duke could still smoke them.
Just for Saturday, Doug, and you can just list through these because you did give me some for the weekend. We don't know the lines yet; they're projected. But maybe, you've got 5 or 6 plays here that you maybe give us your best 2 as well, or best bet for Saturday before you go, because people like to get stuck in for the weekend as well.
Yeah, a couple. I do love a NBA play, so that'll be my favorite play for the weekend because it's a trend that's been hitting really effectively. But in college, there's a lot of intriguing matchups, and annoyingly, I've been on a lot of. I'm looking ahead to the Saturday lines, and it's a lot of chalk, and I don't want to just bet chalk. I'm not afraid to lay points by any means, but there's a few games that I have circled. I would say Clemson, Virginia. Keep an eye on this Virginia team. We know them as this methodical offense, great defense, but they've actually gone over 10-0-1 to the over in their last 11 games. Let's call it 10-1, depending on your number. But they've been shooting effectively, and they've been giving up points. This is not Tony Bennett's team. So I think that could be a good over. But I would say my favorite play is I'm going to roll with Auburn. Right now, Ken Palm, which is a metric website that a lot of sports bettors subscribe to and follow, Auburn's only a 5-point favorite at Kentucky. And look, Rupp Arena is going to be electric, and Kentucky's good, but they've been banged up. Lamont Butler's not played the whole, much of the conference season. And this Auburn team has so battle tested. They've only lost 1 conference game, and I think the program has lost 16 straight at Kentucky. So I do think there's going to be something about the Tigers wanting to get that, it's another feather in their cap. I think they'll be up for this game. I think Bruce Pearl's an excellent coach. They might even be down at halftime because it's going to be a great environment, but they're going to score. And they're a team that is top, 10 in both offense, top 15 in both offense and defensive efficiency. Kentucky's a nice team, but their defense, I think Auburn's going to be able to score it well. Kentucky ranks in the 60s defensively. So I think Auburn's going to do what they want to do. And we saw that a couple Saturdays ago with Bama. Auburn and Alabama played. Auburn went into Tuscaloosa and won in a 1-versus-2 matchup. I think the game's going to play out similarly. I think Bruce Pearl will know how to defend the Kentucky offense, and I think the Tigers will get what they want on the offensive end against this Wildcats D. So I like that. And my favorite play is a prop bet in the NBA. Yeah. So Malik Monk is a guard on the Sacramento Kings, and every game, the last 10 stretches or whatever, 10 games, his prop's been 19.5. and he's gone under in 7 of those. And why do I bring up the last 9 games? It's because they made some trades. And so what happened is Malik Monk was a bench player, the 6th man, and he got bumped up to starting point guard with some of the trades. And what happens is everything's changed for him, right? So he was a 6th man facing reserves often, not the entire game, but often, and scoring a lot of points. And it was the only thing he had to worry about because De'Aaron Fox was on the team running the offense. Well, now Monk has to orchestrate the offense as a point guard. And so there's just a lot more responsibility. You have to make sure all your other stars are fed. You have to get them the shots that they want. So they have Sabonis, they have DeRozan, they have Zach LaVine, who they just acquired, who went for 40 plus the other night. So Monk is just tasked with a lot more. And so he's just not scoring a bunch. He's not making his shots. Now he's shooting a decent amount, so the volume is there. But still, he's just going under. And then they're on top of that, they're facing the Houston Rockets on the road on Saturday. The Rockets are top 5 in defensive efficiency. And so, look, can he score 20-something points? Of course. But I just think there's more ways to win on the under than the over. If you sort of think about the range, like he can have 12, 13 points or 25. And then I just think there's more ways to win on the under. So I'm going to keep riding this trend, especially against a Houston team that locks down defensively and cares about defense, which is not something we say about a lot of NBA teams.
Yeah, that is Malik Monk under 19.5 points, Kings at Rockets in the NBA on Saturday. And I know you do like an underdog. You are certainly do like your unders in general in sport. You mentioned that on a few of the other shows we've done, but it's been brilliant to have you on Betting Weekly Live as per usual. Thanks so much for your time. Just before we go, I've got to mention the notable live streams that Bet Rivers have got today in the soccer. We have got Sheffield Wednesday, Sunderland, the EFL Championship, LaLiga matches or the La Liga 2. The Monaco Reims game I mentioned at the top of the show, that is available to live stream, in addition to 5 second division matches in France. We've got the tennis on as well, ATP, Acapulco and Santiago, and the WTA in Austin and Merida. And there are 4 Bet Rivers House specials today, most notably Bayern Munich against VfB Stuttgart, both teams to score, and Bayern Munich to win that match at plus 170. We've also got some goal scoring props in the Villa game and Valladolid against Las Palmas in La Liga. But yeah, that is it for Betting Weekly Live this week. Thanks very much. Jack Albarise there. Sorry, I only just seen this comment. 13th centre back pairing tonight for the Villa game. So be very reluctant backing Villa to win 2-0. And Ming Chung, good to hear that you are fit indeed. And he says, thanks very much for your insights, Doug. And Duncan, good luck to you today, and good luck to everyone this weekend. Remember to gamble responsibly. It's been so much fun on Betting Weekly Live this week, as always. Doug, it's been a pleasure, as always. Thanks very much to Jack earlier, and we'll see you next time on Betting Weekly Live. Take care, y'all.